Hello, I'm Dr. Terry James Gingrass, and this is Dr. G's ADHD Chat show trying to make the world safe for ADHDers. I'm a clinical neuropsychologist, a coach, and the father of two ADHD children. I got one of each. I got an inattentive daughter and a hyperactive son. And I'm married into a whole family of ADHD people. And I have been in private practice for a long, long time and treating a lot of ADHD and doing a lot of evaluations as well. So I know ADHD from both sides, both the practical and the personal, or the clinical and the personal. And it's been quite a ride because when I started out having kids, that is, ADHD was not a diagnosis. ADHD did not exist. It was hyperreactive response to childhood, which had a couple of errors in it. One, it implied that all ADHD was hyperactivity, and two, it implied that since it was only childhood, that you grew out of it, you outgrew it. Boy, do we know that's not true. But we didn't even have a diagnosis of ADHD till, that was 1987. ADD was a diagnosis in 1980, but they changed that for reasons best known only to themselves. But just recently, in a lot of the professional journals, and then some that are not professional journals, but just with people write and think about ADHD, there's kind of a conflict, you have some people who say, oh, it's a disability, it's horrible, it's a terrible thing. My father died because of ADHD, or things like that. And then there are other folks who are calling it a superpower. It's, oh, you're so creative and you're so able to problem solve in unique and interesting ways. Well, like most extremes, neither one of them is probably exactly true or right. But what you get is that with ADHD, you have to adapt and adjust like you do with anything else. And the deal we get, though, the thing we get is that people want one answer or the other. They can't. But as an ADHD parent, you've got a big job because you have to pay attention to a lot of stuff that parents of neurotypical kids just don't have to pay attention to as much. You really need to be tuned in to your kids because ADHD there are a lot of different presentations. It's not all one thing. The big deal, though, is that you have to do that other people don't necessarily have to emphasize so much is, I would say two things. One is you have to be really tuned in to what your child's interests are, what their hobbies, what lights their fire, what gets them, what can they just sit around for 2 or 3 hours just kind of doing, and because odds are they're not going to follow a traditional employment path. They're not going to end up selling, well, maybe they'll be in selling something, but they're probably not going to be real comfortable in the corporate environment, sitting at a desk all day and doing corporate-y things. Okay, so you've got to pay more attention to that than other folks with more typical neurotypical kids, because all the systems are really designed for neurotypical people. The school system, oh my God, is, first of all, the school system is in wild need of a design. Okay, we are still basically using the system that I think it was Rockefeller encouraged so he could have people who could work in his family in his factory and read the instructions for the machinery and that sort of thing. We, are asking ADHD kids to leave home, ride the bus, or get driven is what happens mostly nowadays, and sit quietly for 6 hours a day to pay attention, to answer questions when asked, but not at other times. And maybe you get a recess and maybe you don't, depending on the school system. And then you're supposed to go home and a lot of times nowadays do homework. There are school systems all over the world that are just doing beautifully. Finland always pops into my head. I don't know what the Nordic people do that's different. Well, I do actually know what they do that's different, but they do something. I mean, they do things that are logical and scientifically accurate, and they get incredible results. Finland, they don't even know what a dropout is. Okay, now think about that. Because I really believe that our school system is based on the culling the herd, kind of getting the kids who can do all that stuff and get A's and everything are encouraged, and everybody else is sort of, well, whatever. So given also, the thing I see and used to see in private practice is probably the biggest person that identified ADHD was probably a teacher, because they run the system that fits ADHD brains the least well. And so they would, well, I think you need to have that kid evaluated, Mom, Dad. Go to nice Dr. Jim Grass and he'll do it. So I got a lot of referrals that way. But the deal is that that's just identifying the system, that the system rewards people who can sit quietly, absorb information, and then regurgitate it, and then go on to the next thing and do the same procedure over again and over again. And I mean, I'm pretty good at that. Obviously, I've been at school a long time, but as I always say, I don't think I'm ADHD. I'm just impatient, and so there. So, but you've got, as an ADHD parent, you've got to paying attention to this kind of thing. I mean, there are some school systems who are doing some pioneering sorts of things. Learning by project, I think, is one that I'm kind of aware of, and sounds like a really good deal to me. Because my own son, he blossomed when there was this thing called Odyssey of the Mind, which is basically a big project where you have to solve some problem and think unconventionally and that sort of stuff. And he was an ace at that. He loved it, and he did really well at it. But he, the traditional style of learning was not exactly his bread and butter. He didn't like that much, and he didn't like to sit there. And matter of fact, he once got his class an extra recess by telling his teacher, we have troubles when we're doing this all the time, and I think it would be better if we had a recess before we try to do that. And the teacher amazingly agreed and gave them a recess, and everything improved. It was. Anyway, that's one of the things that ADHDers can do. They're really good problem solvers, and most of them are really creative and see solutions faster than other people because they're willing to think outside the box and do more creative solutions, and maybe ones that are not so conventional. Now I'm kind of getting on my high horse here a little bit, because I have a real problem with our school systems. I just like I've said, it's 100 years out of date. It's designed to teach people not to be creative. It's trying to teach people to memorize. If you can memorize, you're going to do great in the school system. If you can't, oh, you're in trouble. Or if you can't pay attention to all these lectures we're giving you, or have the patience to read all these chapters that we're asking you to read, and some of which are not terribly well written, I must add. But, Lord, the things we're asking these kids to do are an ADHD kid. I don't know that any kid honestly should be doing that. I think we should be encouraging more enthusiasm, more creativity, more thinking outside the box, less just rote memorization. Because the way things are going, none of us are going to need to be able to memorize anything. All we're going to do is go into our little iPhone or our iPad or our computer and ask AI, ask Claude, or ask ChatGPT. That's what's coming. And we can say, oh God, this is terrible, or we can adapt and adjust, which is the way it usually works. So the systems that our kids are having to do, go with, to adjust to and adapt to, don't really serve ADHD kids very well. And so that's one of the reasons I am so big on resilience. Okay. Resilience is not something that's genetic. You're not born with it. It's trained. And that's probably, in my mind, the biggest duty of an ADHD parent is you have to teach your child to be resilient. And that's basically there shouldn't be failure. Yeah, there are mistakes, but failure, oh my God, no, you don't want to be doing that. You want, okay, this didn't work out quite the way we wanted it to. What did we learn? How can we make it so this doesn't happen again? More that kind of approach to problem solving, and recognizing that the thing that probably scares parents most is how emotional an ADHDer can get, especially a hyperactive ADHDer. They can throw temper tantrums that, frankly, frighten parents. And we had some difficulties with that when my young man was younger, and I wouldn't say that that's. I mean, you don't totally outgrow that. That's all I'll say. You're still going to be a little more reactive than the average person. But what you need to be doing as a parent, first of all, is you need to be identifying strengths. That's your biggest job. I mean, we're all trained to be critical. We are critical to ourselves. We say things to ourselves in our heads, that we would punch somebody if they said it to us. And that's not really a good thing for us. But identifying his or her strengths. What are they really good at? I just finished an article in Attitude magazine, which was about all the athletes that have ADHD, and there are a bunch of them, and they have, which makes sense to me. There were all kinds of athletes. There were gymnasts, there were swimmers, there were Michael Phelps is probably one of the better known ADHDers, but Terry Bradshaw, which, he was quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers when I was a boy, and he has ADHD and dyslexia, and everybody thought he was stupid. And he's a very bright fellow who's done very well. He always says, yeah, they think I'm stupid, but I'm calling all the plays out there in the field, and I've won the Super Bowl that way. So, but the deal with as the parent is your job is to recognize interests and encourage them. Puzzles, solving puzzles, playing musical instruments, playing sports, encourage all of that stuff. It's important because you don't know where things are going to end up. I mean, none of us do. And it's the only way you can try to make things, I mean, because I will tell you, you never know what their interests exactly are, but you've got to try to encourage them to pursue some interests, and knowing, of course, there are some limits to that approach, but uh, you've got, and some of them are financial, and some of them are just, you don't have the time and the energy to take them to uh, everything, and we're have gotten so intense on youth sports, particularly, but I think a lot of the other areas as well. I mean, it's getting so that being the parent of a kid who's a pretty good athlete is a full-time job. I mean, because they've got to be in travel squad, and you're traveling all over the state and sometimes all over the region, and we've got to have practices and may need special training. I have a patient, an ex-patient actually now. He had a brain injury and had a stroke and had been a baseball coach at a local university, and couldn't do a lot of that kind of stuff. But he set up a batting cage in his garage, and he was making a pretty good living teaching girl softball players hitting. And so there's always something that you can do, and the things that we need to be thinking about is, okay, what are his interests? What is he, what does he really like doing? What kind of things can he do really pretty well all the time? And so, as a parent, you're trying to identify those interests and encourage them. At the same time, you're teaching resilience. And by the way, if you ever, I'm right now my newsletter. I'm running I think it's a 10-part series on resilience, and you can go to my website, terrygingrassphd.com, and sign up for that. And the because I think the resilience is the signal thing. If you can't do anything else for your ADHD child, do that. Teach them resilience. Teach them how to recover from a mistake, and learn from it. That's huge, and it might be good for you as well, because I know I didn't learn that. I learned, mistake. You made a mistake. You're a failure. That's the matter with you, and that sort of thing. But that's the way things were taught once upon a time. So you identify their talents, teach them resilience. So you got with ADHD kids, you've got some things you have to do. One is you have to teach them how to work with the equipment they've got. Okay, I got this ADHD brain. What are we going to do with it? And that's learning some skills, some compensatory skills for working memory, for the short-term memory that you tell them to pick up your clothes, put them in the laundry basket, make your bed, and something else. And then you leave them in their room, and you come back and they have picked up their clothes and they're playing video games, and they don't know why the heck you're so angry, because what's happened is their working memory just totally dumped that information, and they honestly don't know that they were supposed to do other things. So you have to teach them to use the equipment, okay? And externalize the executive functions, checklists, schedules on the mirror in the bathroom, procedures, all that sort of thing. Use the brain you've got, and then figure out where they can best apply that. That's you got to control the brain, and then you got to figure out which environments are the best to be in. Okay, it may be that a Montessori school is a better fit for your child than traditional uh, academics in your public school, say. Uh, One of the things you've got to remember is that public schools are the only ones that have accommodations, formal accommodations and formal programs. If they need, if your child also has dyslexia, you get reading instruction uh, as part of being in that school system. Whereas if you go to a private school, they don't have those usually. Okay, so figure out what the strengths are, what the weaknesses are, how to compensate for them, how to use that brain, and then put that brain in the right environment. Those two things, and you put it in the right environment, and you've done the job before of training, training and teaching accommodations, and teach them that it's not something to be ashamed of. That accommodations are smart. Everybody uses them, uh, but maybe not everybody needs them as much as you do. But that doesn't matter. That doesn't have to be a thing that, oh, it's because you've got ADHD. That's a problem. So we're going to do this. No. Okay. Teach them how to use that brain. Teach them what environments are best for them with that brain. And if you do those two things, and resilience is part of training them how to use that brain. Okay. So that's all kind of wrapped up in a nice, neat bow for a pretty sloppy situation that you have to deal with. Okay. If you have any questions, please get them to me. And if you have any particular problems, please get in touch with me. I'm semi-retired, so this is not like, oh, I gotta make them, or my kids will starve to death or any of that. Okay, so most of everything you can do, you can get in touch with me through my website. It's terrygingrassphd.com, and you can sign up for that newsletter I was talking about. We've got a couple of series we've done, but resilience is what we're doing right now. And if you have other topics that you'd like me to cover, please let me know. And the other thing is I do a podcast, Dr. G's ADHD Chat, that comes out. Well, you know that. You're probably watching it right now. So please, and if you would be so good and would like to write a recommendation or an impression or that sort of thing, I'd appreciate that. And that's about all I got. Okay, we'll catch you next time. Remember, we're trying to make the world safer for ADHD. And we'll see you next time.